Credit rating, may it be by Moody or may it be by Standard & Poor's, is an assessment of a country's ability to be able to sustain investment for big investors or for any other investor to trust the outcome is possible. And it's normally done by very big sovereign wealthy funds, it's done by the pension fund and big investors. So these organizations require to know what is the security of tenure of their investment. What are the chances that their investment will be stable, is guaranteed, and it will be able to be recouped with the time promised. That's basically what an assessment is for these big institutions.
Now, having explained that, how serious is the downgrade that we saw yesterday by Moody's downgrading 5 South African banks, of course following on the heels of Moody's downgrading South Africa's or the South African government's credit rating last week?
What it does is that remember, these are big funding agencies, or these are people holding so much money, the pension fund, the sovereign wealthy funds, and therefore it becomes very difficult for you to access to borrow money from them. In other words, most likely it will make us look as if the investment opportunities are not as promising as they should be, and therefore if you want to sell the bond, or if the price of the bond goes very high, the price of the bond goes very high, the investment opportunities, even if they are there, the investors become very anxious, very urgent. And in that case, what will happen is they will be able to run away from this destination, which is South Africa. And what then happens is that the investment are low, the attitude is low, the willingness to put money is also low. Therefore, it will have consequences on, among others, like I said, the price of the bonds, it will be higher, the interest rate will change. Normally, you find this, you have to pay more to get the kind of money you want. And of course, the exchange rate will be affected. The rand will depreciate further than it is today. So it is not one of the best scenarios to be in.
Now, talking about that, the downgrading by Moody's of Eskom last week after Moody's downgraded the government's credit rating, apparently they downgraded Eskom to junk status. First explain what does that mean and how serious is this for Eskom?
Again, the rating is how bad is the situation. When you get to the junk, you are getting on a very bad side of the rating. Let's put the number. In a scale of 1 to 10, you want to be rated 10, that is AA+. If you are rated 5, okay, it's stable. When you get to junk, you are rated very low. And in that case, what does that mean? It means if Eskom was to go out there and try to sell bond, to be able to say, give me this money, I guarantee you this payment at a maturity of such and such a time, they will have to be either penalized or they will find it very difficult to borrow money. And that's the key. In other words, remember, we are talking of billions and billions. We are not talking of little money here. And you are telling those pension funds, maybe the pension fund is sitting somewhere in Brazil or Austria, that has so much money, and it wants to release to Eskom to be able to do what we need to do. We are penalized. It doesn't mean we will not get the fund, but we have to pay much more than we should had we been rated better.
Now, following on this latest downgrade by Moody's, most analysts now are saying all eyes are now on Fitch and Standard & Poor's to see if they also downgrade first the country, the government, and then maybe the banks. And already we understand that Fitch and S&P have already put South Africa's credit rating on BBB status, which is, we are told, 1 notch above junk status. How serious is such a threat that we may be facing here?
I think if you look at B and B+, we are relatively stable. But still, we are not as good as when we used to have A's. That's point number 1. Number 2, I think the question they may be asking me is why is it happening that all of them are downgrading? And to me, those are the issue factors we need to discuss. However, let me put it clearly. When these ratings are showing a negative to any economy, all of them at the same time, is not going to help us at all. It's saying there is something we need to look at ourselves and question, what do we do to stop it? Because it's not going to be very easy for this country to go back to the investment relationship it had with the global world.
Now, on that very question, what do we do about this? What's your advice?
The advice is simple. Let's first of all understand what causes so much of this. First of all, we look at some economic factors that we need to look at. One of which, we tend to look at the GDP growth rate. Is our economic growth rate very good or bad? Well, 2% or less than 2% is not going to be very attractive to those people who are looking for a big investment. Number two, we look at whether we have stability in terms of political discourse of the country. You and I would agree, what we watch these days, particularly in our august institution, the parliament, keep wary of all of us what's going on. Number three, you look at institutions like what we are watching. Initially, we had a lot of instability in terms of the mining houses, the trade union. Now we are even seeing worse among the trade union itself is splitting. What does that mean? Does that make it better for investors? Number four, we look at what we call environment for investors. When you hear the crime rate in a country, these are the key issues we need to understand. We can't be watching one show of a month of a Pistorius case. Then we have the one case. These are flashing on TV. Then we had the most painful incident of the best footballer, again on TV. It keeps investors wary. Where are we heading to? But critical to all this is to understand that anything we do, individually or collectively, that is negative, has a consequence in economics. And to me, those are the discussion that the country needs to start wondering and asking themselves, what is that we are not doing right?
Very, very interesting interview.